My name is Myrthe. I am a psychedelic facilitator and end-of-life doula. I am very excited to be on the Online Prosperity Show. And today we'll give an insight into what it means to be working with psychedelics and the topic of death and dying and grief and loss, and how this can be an incredible tool for transformation.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. And I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga. And today we have a truly remarkable guest who offers a unique blend of wisdom, compassion, and a deep insight into some of life's most profound transitions. Now, Myrthe, how are you doing today?
I'm very well. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here with you.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. I was practicing behind the scenes how to pronounce your name, and I was way off. But I'm hoping by the end of this, I will be an expert in pronouncing your name. But I like your last name. It's a little bit easy to go with, so I think we'll go with that. Now, for those that are watching right now, you might be surprised what it is that I'm talking about. So Myrthe Peters is not just a guide, but also is also a companion for those that are navigating the emotional landscapes of death, dying, grief, or loss. And as she has explained to me, it's not all about the end of life, but there is other deaths that are happening predominantly in our lives that we are all going to be learning all about. And so many of us are not quite well versed with her line of work, and that's the reason why I'm bringing her in to have a chat with us. So she has mastered the art of creating safe, transformative places and spaces where people can actually explore the difficult topics and come out on the other side living more authentically and courageously. Now, Myrthe's work is a fusion of ancient wisdom and modern healing practices. And I promise today's conversation is going to leave you both enlightened and empowered. Now, Myrthe, I could go on and talk about things I know nothing about. Tell me a little bit about your journey and what actually drew you into this line of work.
Well, thank you for the introduction. Got a little bit of a blush on my cheeks. So my name is Myrthe or Myrthe. I'm based in Lisbon, Portugal. And I am a psychedelic guide. I predominantly work with psilocybin and combine my psychedelic facilitation with end-of-life doula practices. This field is really, really special. It's a field where we get to explore the finality of events. It is very important for us human beings to become familiar with what an ending is and develop the skills to process that in a way that is actually going to serve us and is going to help us grow. Grief is probably the biggest tool to transformation, and many of us are unaware of that. And when we talk about death and dying and grief and loss, and particularly in our white Western world, there is still a big taboo around this, and we don't necessarily recognize that there are more deaths than just the physical deaths of people and pets. We have the death of relationships. We have the death of parts of our identity. We have the loss of a job, loss of an opportunity, things we never had. And once we get a better understanding of that, we realize, okay, there is emotions that come up with this and they require attention. And that's when that grieving process comes in. And once we start grieving the parts that need to be grieved, that really gives us an opportunity to re-examine, reassess, recalibrate all our different worlds. And that is what I support people with.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us on that journey. Now, I mean, obviously, these are profound aspects of the human experience. I mean, death in and of itself, dying, grief, and loss. At any given moment, somebody's experiencing either one of those things. Now, what drew you into this line of work?
Mm-hmm. For me, it was really, I've always had a fascination for death and dying and grief and loss already from quite a young age on. And as I was developing my career and got more into, the line of work where we support people and we try to create impact, I just realized it wasn't enough. And I started looking for, okay, how can I first of all accept that this fascination of death and dying and grief and loss is one that I can embrace, right? Because from my environment, it was never really encouraged to do something with that, frowned upon. People thought it was weird if I brought it up as a topic. And then what else is there in addition to how it is portrayed within our society, and how what else is there in addition to the medical system, right? Because I'm not one who would like to be involved necessarily in becoming a doctor or a nurse or a paramedic or something like that. So for me, it was always about the emotional and spiritual side of this. And then one day I just stumbled upon the term doula. And from there, I kind of just followed signs and got qualified, and started doing more with this in combination with the psychedelic facilitation.
Absolutely. So, I mean, as a kid, like you said, you were very fascinated about death and dying. Was that the kid fascination of stamping on an ant and watching it die, or did you actually feel and experience something at a spiritual level of those experiences?
Yeah, it was very much more a spiritual experience, and I wanted to be in places where that energy was present. So, for example, think about graveyards. We where I grew up, there was a graveyard, a cemetery, very close to our home, and regularly I went there just to kind of walk around or be there on my bike. And very often I was sent away because what does it? I don't even know how old I was. I was young. What does it? Why does a kid want to play there? Yeah, so it was. I was very much looking for the things that we cannot see.
Mm, absolutely. And the people around you, what was their sort of response, for them hearing or knowing or understanding that maybe this is the sort of fascination that you had? Were there no people that were telling you at least, hey, you go play with princesses and dolls instead
Yeah,
of...
discomfort. And I still have that sometimes, right? When I mention what I do, it's like, oh, okay, well, barriers, because it can be a very challenging topic. People are sometimes not ready to really be with the emotions that come with these processes until they really have to. Whereas I'm a firm believer that once we start practicing this, and I see this in the different groups that I facilitate within the community to, bring on the conversation, to give people the tools to ask questions to loved ones, like, how do you want to die? Who do you want to have present? Once we start practicing this, it will become so much easier. And it's not going to be a massive overwhelm on our nervous system.
Understandable, because I mean, obviously, it's not something that people really um conversing about each and every single day. And obviously, these are the adults that were in your family. How about school? Would you have friends that would say, hey, come hang out with us, and you'd say, nah, I'm good, I'm gonna be at the cemetery because that's my jam?
Mm-hmm. I think it was a bit of both. And to be honest, I can't remember that much of it either. It is a long time ago. But I have always felt different from my friends. Yeah. Yeah. From my friends back in the day. Now that's different, right? Because I'm way more aware of what I want my relationships to be like. So I have a clearer choice in who I spend my time and energy with. And people who resonate with me in this field, they are part of my inner circle now.
Mm, absolutely.
Whereas
So,
when you grow up, it's like you're kind of a little bit forced to who is in your class and who lives in your village, right?
absolutely. Yeah, you have no say in a lot of things. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, with this sort of experience that you were going through in your life, did you not at some point maybe start questioning your own reality? Because if everybody else around you has a whole different way of being and doing, did that not make you feel somewhat of a some I wouldn't know what term to use for that, but you know, we are human beings and we always seek to belong and we always seek to find our own.
Yeah, that's a good question. And for sure, that happened. And that happened for a long time until I went to see an astrologer. And I basically went with this question of, okay, I have this fascination. It keeps coming back. I don't know what to do with this. Is this even normal? And the moment that he started talking and he started explaining to me what my natal chart looks like and what that means, how the stars were exactly aligned, stars and planet when I was born, it was, it all made sense. And it was as if he, in that moment, gave me a permission slip to say, okay, this is really what you're meant to be doing. You're meant to be working in this space. Now off you go. So that shifted a whole lot. And still, sometimes I have moments where I feel like an imposter, for example. Yeah.
Mm, absolutely.
And I
Now,
think,
yeah.
yeah, I don't think we can prevent that. Everyone will have that at some point.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of people that, you know, who sort of dabble in this sort of space, not dabble, but who are predominant in this sort of space, the fascination leads to then being able to communicate and maybe interpret some messages and things of that nature. Did that ever maybe occur to you, you know, or does that ever happen to you that you can interpret messages of those that have passed?
Yeah, I do get messages when I'm with clients. I get messages for them, and I have to always be very mindful of the messages that I receive. Are they ready to hear this message? Or are we still peeling back some layers and they're building up the trust and the foundation to really hear what the message is? So sometimes I have to wait and I cannot immediately share. Yeah.
And where are these messages coming from? Are they coming from their own being or beings that are associated with that particular client?
They are beings associated with that particular client. And if we want to make it a little bit broader, it comes from a higher part than who we are, right? So if we talk about our connection to the divine, the cosmos, universe, God, that is the type of communication line that is coming through. And sometimes it's from a very specific person, and sometimes it's like this is coming from a higher being, not necessarily knowing who this is, but the message is so clear that there is no way that we can doubt the content of it. Even if we clarify, like, is this really a message? Can I communicate this? And then obviously if the answer is yes, then then I will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things where if you're in the midst of things and a message comes through, yeah, you want to authenticate,
Yeah,
whether that person, because whatever you're going to say from then on, just like what the astrologer did with you, you could literally lead somebody onto a path that is something
exactly.
else. And speaking of which, you had someone come into your path and sort of offer that pattern break. And
Yeah,
before you were on this journey, you said you were feeling a little bit like you were leading a superficial life.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Searching for something that was much more meaningful. Maybe you can share about what life was like before you made this transition, just
yeah,
so that people can have um a grasp of this new meta, and you can also
mm,
maybe tell us how this search for purpose has now shaped the work that you're doing today.
yeah. So when I say superficial, it's really about the fact that the way our society is set up was not functioning for me. For me, what I was really missing was the true depth of emotional connection. So the the trust that people build and the vulnerability that we can show in relationships. In a workspace, it's all about competition. There is like a real coherence of people. When we look at leadership, like what is the leadership based on? There are all these hierarchies that just really didn't resonate with me. And then just practicality wise, looking at the amount of admin that I had to do for a job that was trying to make impact and being dependent on funding from the government to do work that really matters, right? That caused so much internal friction. I was like, surely there has to be something else. There has to be more than this. Um, my own journey, how this ties in, is that I was in cognitive behavioral therapy for many, many years, from a teenager on up until my mid-20s. And there was this point where I just realized this is why am I still here? Nothing has changed. Yes, okay, I've got tools now to navigate my thoughts. However, it's still not bringing me back to my essence, to what is really alive within me that I can share with the world as a gift. And moving away from that was a really big step, and embracing the power of plant medicine as a catalyst for change for myself. That's really how I got into the psychedelic part of this. And then sitting with these plants for many, many hours, learning from them, really dipping into the extent of our emotional world. And once we get a full picture of that, the expansion we can create with the people in our environment, once we really believe that we can own all of what we have in terms of emotions, that is going to have such a beautiful effect on the people that we interact with. So that's really how that came about, and that is the biggest part of my world, is to bring people back to a connection to their emotional world internally, without having to work with what is going on in the outside world.
Absolutely. And that must be very difficult because there's not a lot of people that would be at that level of connection and understanding, and that you can gel with, that you can work with. But during this time, you came across a friend, that helped with these sort of challenges. First of all, how did that happen? And, second of all, how did that then sort of evolve? because there will be a lot of hand holding that is needed for the right person for this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess I have some trusted people in my network, and I am very aware that I operate in a place where I do my work pretty much on my own, because I like how I work and I see the benefits, and I'm very protective over that. So my professional circle in that sense is relatively small. But in terms of hand holding for others, I guess I have never been scared of the depth of people's emotions once they make an appearance. And the fact that I have no intention of changing whatever is going on in someone's internal world, because I know that we all have our own process and we need time to process. The moment that I grant someone that time and be very present with them in whatever they are working through, that gives so much space to for that person to be seen. And this is also important when it comes to grief. Grief needs to be witnessed. Very often we want to change someone's pain, but we're not going to, right? Because it's something very final that has happened in their lives. Life will never be the same for them. So they will need to go through that process. And the moment we allow them to go through that process without wanting to change anything, and can just be there as a companion, as a witness, and hold that space very delicately and with so much care, then that will change the whole perception and the process of that person.
Apparently, grief has 5 stages, right? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Does that exist in your world?
So there are people who follow this, and then there is new theories on this. I guess what in my world is important to understand is, and what I bring into my world is that grief is not a linear process, and it's not linked to time. So imagine a big ball of wool with different colors, and grief makes an appearance, and it's just all modeled up. It's up to us to kind of find the beginning, pull out a piece of the thread, look at the color. Now, what does the color represent? Like, what emotion is that? Processing that. The moment we've processed it, we can pull the next one. Now, sometimes we might have to go back, but it's like bit by bit. And the notion of time, like there's an invitation from me to for people to let go of this notion of time, right? There is very often an expectation that after 6 months or a year or 5 years, we need to be done grieving, but it's not like that, because grief is love with no place to go. And the love doesn't go, right? So the grief is still there. The grief is still there to remind us, okay, we have love for this person still, or we have pain because this person died and we never got to do XYZ, or XYZ happened and there is grief around that. So it's a little bit more complicated, I believe, than just the 5 stages. And that is okay, because I'm also a believer that we already, all of us, have everything inside of us that we need to heal from specific events. That's already there. It's just modeled up. It's modeled up. We need to peel back the layers. And that goes over time, with having no time frame in mind.
Absolutely. From what you're saying, obviously, your clients and the people you work with have to completely trust you, because once they are in that sort of state, they are going to need to know that this is going to be taken care of and it's not permanent.
Yes, it's true. And, it happens sometimes that people, they get confronted with something old that tests their trust. And it has come up that people in that particular state, they go, I don't trust you. And that is okay, right? This is very much a place for me where we can practice. We can rewire our old brain patterns into ones that benefit us more. So I have different tools to bring them back to a sense of trust, right? Working with the physical body, working with eye contact. There is so much that we can do, because the trust is very often in a moment like that comes from the mind, right? Because it's based on a past experience.
Wow. And people
Mm-hmm.
need to have, some depth of understanding that they need to go through this, and on the
Yeah.
other side, they
Yes.
right. Now, your work spans through, from what I've noticed, across birth, death, and everything in between. Um, how then do you sort of balance these aspects without you getting involved? You know what I mean? Because if
Mm-hmm.
you're dealing with somebody's stuff and they're really releasing, or they're going through that transformation that you're creating, how do you separate that and still be present enough for them to trust you?
Yeah. So obviously I have my own time before and after I'm with a client, and that helps me set up for the day, because it's a full day of work. I say work, but yeah, it's a full day of yeah,
Anyway.
it's a full day of inner work together.
Mm.
Um, Sometimes up to like 8 or 9 hours, and that is draining for all parties involved. It's very taxing on the system. So I have my way to set up in the morning, and I have my way to end the day, and to kind of break the relationship that I've created with someone over the day. And then I have my practices on my days off. I love being with my plants in my home. I love going into nature, swimming in the ocean. I love cooking. I have a few friends that I really love to spend time with, who give me lots of energy. And then mostly I like to also be on my own. That's how I recharge. And I just potter about, and I journal, and I listen to music. And yeah, so there is different ways. And it's important for me to tune in the moment. Okay, what do I really need? Because it can be different every time, right?
Absolutely. And I quite like how you've set yourself up. I mean, you're not anywhere on social media. And I tried looking around to just see if I can get a glimpse of the kind of work that you do, but your whole process is set up in a way that those that need you will find you, right?
Exactly.
And for a person like me, it's such an empowering place to be, to know that there's people like you in existence, which really, really validates the whole connection is not necessarily over an algorithm.
No.
There's ways and channels that you have sort of used. So first of all, how has this decision sort of impacted your business, and what does it say about the power of intuition in the work that you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was a very deliberate decision to not be on social media anymore, because I noticed it was just draining me, and it became harder and harder to come up with content. I noticed that it just didn't feel good to be sharing this stuff on the socials, and I'm not necessarily a person who likes to be in this full visibility. And then there is a part, obviously, like how much of my work can be seen. And most importantly, I love it when organic connections happen. And I'm not saying that they don't happen over social media, because they do. And that is great. But for me and for this line of work, I choose very deliberately to be seen in my community and for people to directly connect with me. Even if it's like a face-to-face, we go for a coffee and we have a chat, because it's a very different way of trust building for this work. People sometimes really underestimate the power of this. This is work of the soul. We cannot take any risks when it comes to trust. Like we talked about that. We touched upon it a couple of minutes ago. So for me to be available in a different way than on the social media, where there is so much white noise and there are narratives going on that I don't necessarily agree with, I do not have the capacity, and I choose not to create capacity to on social media bring in my perception of the narrative. I prefer to do that in my community.
Absolutely. And I absolutely respect that. I'll have you know, in 2020, I got kicked off of Facebook, and I decided I was never going to go back ever again, even though that is a big part of my work and what I'm supposed to be doing as a digital marketer. But you're absolutely right. The energy, the force field that is around social media is bringing nothing to the actual progress in humanity. I mean, yes, we do want to connect, but if you notice, most of the stuff that's coming out of that is just, yeah, something else. Anyway, your work is also involving trauma informed body work. I mean, a lot of people, even just scrolling on Facebook, is inducing trauma on a lot of people, because you are meeting people at different aspects of life, time, and everything else that comes along with it. So you never know what might hit you at that particular time. And that in and of itself, takes you away from that. What does, since you're not telling people on social media, and if somebody has found you through this podcast, what does a typical session look like, and how are you tailoring it to, suit each different client?
Mm. So all of my work is about building trust, and people believe very often that it is all about the experience, the big day, but it's not. It's very much also about the preparation beforehand. So my process always involves a preparation in person, because it's important for us to be in physical presence. Does it still feel good? Do we feel safe? How does a hug feel? Right? That's all very important information that we need before we can move forwards. Then we have a full day, and depending on who I'm working with, we might have one preparation session, we might have 4 or 5 preparation sessions. It's all very much tailored. Then we have the full day, and then we also have integration. And integration is, and I really want to emphasize this, once we've had an experience, we come out usually with some profound insights. Now, the work continues because we have to do something with those insights. If we just leave them and don't actively work with them, it's really not worth getting into this type of work. The transformation lies in what we do with what we've gained and how we're going to implement that in our day-to-day. So integration, how do we find new ways, new habits, little activities that we can build in consistently Does it need to be long, right? Sometimes we begin with a minute of meditation per day, but the consistency is the key in making the the experience, turning it into a transformational one.
And obviously, given the deep level of transformation or the transformative nature of the work that you do, what has been maybe the most rewarding outcome? Or maybe, obviously you won't be able to say names or whatever, but if you can give us an example of a most rewarding outcome from one of these where somebody would have been totally in a whole different um, direction, but with the work that you did, they're now looking at a whole different way of life. If you can maybe just give us some sort of a glimpse into what this does.
Yeah. What I'd like to preface this with as well is that like this type of work can be very, very challenging, right? Because we're working with the mind, and the mind has a very strong presence in how we live our lives. So when we ask to go from our minds into our hearts and into our intuition, into our gut, that's a really big move. So sometimes we need a few sessions to build this muscle of working in this very particular way. And it's very much up to each individual as to how much they dare to go into that. So in principle, each individual has a lot of agency. So the power of change is a combination of the medicine, the willingness of someone to actually go there, and then obviously there's a part of my role as well because of the way that I guide. And now I forgot your question. I'm so sorry.
Absolutely. Just you could just tell us if
Yes. Okay. Yes. So some beautiful outcomes. For me, the most what I love so much is when people get this glimpse, or more than a glimpse, of what it is to be them, of their authentic self, of these gems that have always been there, but they are disconnected from. Very often that is joy and pleasure, right? As human beings, we tend to like suffering, and we tend to stay into situations in our head that make worries go bigger, bigger, bigger. And the moment that someone experiences that relief of, okay, when I just let an emotion be here, be with it in my full presence in the moment, that's when things really start to flow. So I've had many clients describe these experiences as the best day of their lives. I've given them the greatest gift by bringing them back to what it is like to be them. Yeah, but the connection to authentic self is incredible.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, I can only
and for people to understand and to feel that they are totally allowed all their emotions all at the same time, doesn't matter, but it is possible, and they are able to hold that. They have the capacity to sit with their emotional world.
absolutely. I quite like that because at the end of the day, so many of us are just wondering generalities. We don't quite know so much that needs to happen in our lives. And guess what? We associate our beings with maybe what it is that we do or who we are in the outside world, which really leaves us to disconnect with who we can possibly become. And that in and of itself would have been put in the showcase, especially in the last couple of years where a lot of people were deemed non-essential and now they don't know what
Yes.
to do with themselves. In any case, what would be the best way that people can maybe find out how you can best work with them or help them? Since you're not on social media and
I
how
do have a website. I do have a website, and people can book a free exploration call with me. So completely no strings attached, just to get to know each other, for me to explain how I work, for them to ask me all kinds of questions. So that would be the best. That would be the best way, or to message me on Telegram or WhatsApp. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely put all those links and details in the show notes below so that people can obviously get started on their journey. Now, Meta, this is obviously something that is a lot of people are coming across right, maybe for the very first time and things like that. And I'm really excited that there's people like you that are willing to hold people's hands so they can explore all that is possible. But when we started here, you introduced us to a young girl who was cycling around the graveyards and, just really enjoying all aspects of things that other kids her age were not enjoying. And obviously, when you would come back home, people would look at you weird or try and talk you out of it. Now, looking back, what sort of advice would you give to that younger girl if you maybe just came across her in a graveyard and knowing what you now know about life and who you are becoming?
Oh, what a beautiful question. I would definitely see if I could open a conversation with this little girl and see where this fascination is coming from, and what she would like to do with it, and how she would like to explore this further. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think there's a few other people out there that would like to open that conversation with you so they too can be put on a path that will actually
Yes.
liberate them.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Totally, totally in service of that.
Absolutely. Now, with all the experiences that you've had and who you've become and things of that nature, maybe we should put that all together in a book. Is that at least a media that you are more comfortable with?
Likely, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah,
Absolutely.
one day, one day.
Great stuff. Well, you know what that means? That means you will then have to come back on the Online Prosperity Show so
I
we
would
can
love
have
to.
we can have a chat regarding that book again.
Love to.
Absolutely. Now, Namete, this has been fantastic, very educational on my part as well. I mean, in life, you meet a lot of people that are doing remarkable stuff, but not every day do you find somebody who is on the verge of transforming others so they too can be do and have a happier existence in the way that you're doing. So, thank you so much for the time we
Thank
spent on
you
the
so
call
much
today.
for having me here. It was really, really great. Thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, you sharing your profound insights and your experiences with us today is just remarkable. I think your work is truly transformative, and I'm sure the audience has actually gained a deeper understanding of how they can actually start navigating life's greatest transitions with courage and authenticity. There's a lot of, like you said, white noise out there in the world right now, which makes it super, super difficult for people to engage and connect and formulate those conclusions for themselves. Now, for those that are watching, if you actually found this episode as enlightening as I did, don't forget to rewatch it or maybe share with somebody who might find true benefit from these valuable lessons. And of course, be sure to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show while you're at it for more inspiring content like this. Until next time, keep living and growing with purpose. Bye for now.